So thank you very much. I think I might need to squeeze into maybe, I'll go maybe at the end. Let's do it that way so we can see what we've got. So in terms of our panelists, first of all, I'd like to introduce Roberto Simrot. He heads up the Insight at Coca-Cola. And actually, like one of our other panelists, Caroline Smiley, who is from Delta Airlines, both of them have been at the University of Georgia. So we both have students from MMR here. Caroline herself was at Digitas before she joined Delta, so she brings some extra experience, I think, into this panel. We have Annie Pettit from Peanut Labs, but you may know her under Love Stats because that's what she does a lot of blogging and tweeting about. And we have Dana Di Gregorio from Nielsen, who's been in the industry for over 10 years and is a big contributor to industry events, including Wire. So thank you very much indeed, judges, for joining us. Let's start with why is bravery important in market research? And I think, Roberto, you've got the microphone, so maybe we can hand over to you to start.
Sounds good. Is the mic on? Great. So thanks, first of all, for joining us. I acknowledge it's lunchtime for the other half, so thanks for you guys to be here. I think bravery is really important when you think about innovation and challenging the status quo. If it wasn't for a few people out there who are really brave in changing things, we'll still be doing things the same way that we're doing in the 50s. And nobody would really think, hey, can we do market research differently? Because it does take bravery for you to stand up and say, and ask the tough questions of, hey, can we do things differently? Why are we doing this way? Why don't we do it the other way, the same way that Ginny Valentine did with semiotics back in the day?
Brilliant, thank you. And should we go on to you, Caroline, because you've also got a microphone, and then I'm sure the other two will join in.
Sure. Sorry. So completely agree with what Roberto said. In addition, I've only been in the industry for about 3 years, but even so, I've already noticed that leadership is very set in their ways. They don't want to change, and I think it takes an element of courage and bravery to kind of combat that and change the way that they're used to doing things to get into a better way of doing things, whether that's more innovative, more practical, so be it, just changing the way that they're doing things. Additionally, in research, standing up for the customer, because oftentimes they do projects so that they can prove out their theory, and when it doesn't prove out their theory, it takes definitely perseverance and also just courage to go against upper leadership and say, actually, you're wrong, this is what we should be doing.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to go back to you, Roberto. I thought it was very interesting about what we're hearing about leadership within organizations and the difficulty for market research to penetrate through there. Is that something that you find as well in your career on the client side?
Sure. It always happens, I think, as Caroline was saying, the prove me wrong research, where people want to do the research just to have their point taken across. And I think that's integral to being a researcher, is standing by what the consumer says and having the transparency point of view and bringing that opinion into the company. And it does take bravery to come up with the opinion that is not the most popular in the room. So definitely day in and day out. And that, in the end, you do end up being recognized for that. I think in the long run, the researchers that are just being yes-sayers, people do spot them and they lose trust over time. So it is definitely important to stay true to the consumer, stay true to the insight you gather and carry it forward in the organization.
Thank you. Let's hear now from the agency perspective and get a view as to what constitutes bravery from your side and why is it important. So over to you, Annie.
Sure. I'll give you a very simple example. As a vendor, I get lots of surveys from clients, and they want to have them programmed and launched to 1,000 people. And occasionally, I am fortunate enough to get to say to them, that grid is ridiculous, and I can't possibly show that to my panelists. So it's the tiniest bit of bravery where you have to tell a client, this is crap. And who's done that? There's some bravery there. No one else has shown this bravery. There's some more bravery back there. So it does happen everywhere. You just have to notice it. It's when your gut's going, I don't want to say that to a client. There's a bit of bravery showing up there.
Thank you,
I would
Dana.
agree with that. I think that, standing up for the customer sometimes means challenging them in ways that they haven't been challenged before. And maybe that means giving them your opinion, which could be the most unpopular in the room, right? So being brave and being courageous is not necessarily acting without fear. It's acting in front of fear and then continuing to do it anyways.
Thank you very much. Now, everybody here has been a judge, and I would be interested to hear what your perspectives are. We deliberately choose a mixture of people on the client and agency side, and it would be really good to hear what you felt your experience was like of judging these awards. So let's start the other way around this time. Let's go to you, Annie, and find out from the agency perspective.
First of all, I have to admit that I was completely surprised that not everyone had the same opinion that I had. What I see as bravery was completely different from what other people saw as bravery. For me, some things were, well, of course everyone does that. And the other people were like, there's no way I would ever do such a thing like that. So it was really fascinating to see just how varied the opinions were. And once I was able to think about things from someone else's perspective, I was like, oh yeah, that clearly is bravery that I didn't notice the first time.
From the rest of the panelists, was that something that you all found, or any difference of opinions on that?
I mean, I completely agree. I had my thoughts of bravery and then heard other people and was persuaded in the other direction sometimes. So it was very eye-opening to hear what other people had to say. Things I thought were brave were just, well, that's their job. So
there is still bravery within the table stakes of the industry, right? So every day, I think that some of us are doing some sort of act of bravery, whether it's, very recognizable or the littlest thing. To me, in viewing all the nominations, one, it was really humbling, and it was also very inspiring to do better, to always continue to persevere in whatever we're doing. But for two, bravery it's not always like the loudest, yell in the room. It's not always like the loudest roar. Like, it's just about saying, you know what, I'm going to continue to try again tomorrow. So it was like subtle things to me that I think really affect change and affected me in the process.
Thank you. And Roberto, you were actually a judge last year, so everybody else was a judge this year. But what was your experience of judging?
Well, it was really interesting because I was coming in as, after the invite from Fiona, thinking, okay, I'm going to be judging people who are brave in the market research industry. So maybe they spoke up for the client or the customer and the consumer. And some of the ones that we had in last year were amazing. There was one specific supplier that was doing research in war territories. So Iraq, Iran, Syria. So it really takes the perception of bravery to a whole different level because they're actually doing in-person interviewing in those areas. Like, well, that's really brave. There was another fellow, I can't remember his name, but they opened a research shop in the UK, and they pretty much second mortgaged their homes. That's bravery and being an entrepreneur, completely different than you would think coming in to being a judge. So it was really fascinating seeing what, you think you're sticking your neck out on a day-to-day basis, but when you look into the people who were awarded last year, and I'm sure the ones this year as well, they're taking it to a whole different level. Yes,
you're right. There was Monkeith and also Big Sofa with Simon Liddington and Matt Lynch. And it is interesting to understand what does constitute bravery. And there's always a lot of debate about that. We've had in other occasions, people have just said, oh, well, in field work, it is dangerous. We've had people that have been assaulted, women that have been assaulted, and other people have said, no, well, that is just their job. That is what they have to do, which for some of us has been quite surprising. And then other areas where we hadn't realized, that bravery, what is entrepreneurialism versus bravery? And that was quite a debate, actually, in this year's panel, wasn't there, in terms of entrepreneurialism? Would any of the judges from this year like to kind of mention anything else that you found in terms of the judging?
I'll just say that I already kind of said it was eye-opening, but it was also the sense that there's so much else outside of the little bubble of corporate research going on that you forget about. So seeing these stories of people out there in the field immersing themselves in totally different cultures that you wouldn't think about as market research, and just hearing their stories was really great, just like this conference and conferences in general, to get that broader scope of market research and remember that it's part of a much bigger organization.
Thank you. We have got a couple of minutes, so I thought I would just quickly ask, does anybody have any questions of our panel who have read some of the most amazing stories? Because if so, let's take them now. Any questions coming from anybody? Yes, thank you.
So of your stories that you've read or from your own experience, what is an inspiring picture of bravery in leadership?
That is an interesting one. Sorry. I do know that in the past, Stan, who was obviously at Coca-Cola and is now at Unilever, was cited, I think, for really great leadership and inspiring a lot of people. So he's one person that I think would have come through from the 5 years of awards that we've given. But great question. Thank you very much indeed for asking that. Well, with 1 minute to go, I'm now going to get the commercial advertisements because we want all of you to come along and hear some of these wonderful stories tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. It's here on your cards, 2 minutes round the corner. There will be Mark Mitchelson and the Rocking Researchers as well, so music and inspirational stories. So we'll start at this end, go through to this end, and hear what's the one plug you're going to say to get everybody to come along tomorrow night. Annie.
Okay. Imagine the worst case scenario of who you don't want to be for a whole week. Find out what that is.
Thank you.
Courage and danger, not words typically associated with market research, but find out how they are tomorrow night.
Thank you, Caroline.
Fiona will be singing karaoke tomorrow. No, definitely inspiring stories. I think all of us can use a little inspiration, especially if we've been in the industry for quite some time.
Thank you.
And the last one, if you think you're sticking your neck out day in and day out, wait to hear some of the stories you're going to hear tomorrow.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Please join me in thanking our panelists for the excellent work they've done.